What I always say, speak up, dare to speak up, even if you feel uncomfortable, make little steps to speak up, because only if you have your voice heard, you can make that change.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to We Are Duffree's Perspectives.
We have a lot of responsibility. We reach thousands and millions of people through the projects that we're doing.
We are a creative agency maximizing the positive impact on businesses, society, and our planet.
So if you currently look at all communication marketing campaigns, it's not always representing society.
Radical change needs to happen now. Otherwise, brands and companies are going to get left behind.
If you're a marketing manager, if you're in a senior position, you're an opportunity maker. So how can you redistribute those opportunities in an interesting way?
Every week, founder Mitchell talks to visionaries and changemakers who are shaking up the status quo.
We create content for every living soul on this planet.
Get ready to be launched into a new perspective.
Nathalie, welcome. Thank you very much for being on board. I've been following you because you're really inspiring. You're the global sponsorship manager at Philips International. And you're known as a huge ambassador for diversity and inclusion. There's a lot of people that probably wouldn't know this role existed.
So I'm Inclusion Diversity Ambassador.
Yeah.
But now I have this new project where I do a transformation in our marketing to make sure that inclusion diversity is well represented. Because of the Black Lives Matter movement, of course, the conversation of inequality and diversity and inclusion became so much more at the surface. And we always were very aware about the importance of having inclusion diversity in everything we do, but also in all the marketing touch points that we develop and create. So our Philips campaigns. And due to actually this discussion, we did an audit on all our marketing, and we realized that it could be enhanced. It's diverse in certain ways, but that could be enhanced. So my manager then asked if I could lead this sort of transformation to make sure that there's a way that we can enhance our communication output. And of course, this is challenging because it's also a little bit of a culture change. So basically, to make it simple so that people understand what it's about. So if you currently look at all communication marketing campaigns, it's not always representing society. And if you want to do it right and connect with the right audiences so that someone else sees himself or recognizes himself in the communication that you develop. And that can be the tone of voice, the type of models that are used, or even the way it's being presented. Because it's not about only cultural background, but also people with a visual handicap or a hearing handicap, that they cannot always, I'm also not sure, but for example, go to how a product works online. You need to maybe cater that to someone who has a certain handicap. So what we're doing now is doing this whole audit in our whole customer journey marketing touch points to really understand how we can improve to cater to this wide, diverse type of audience that exists in society.
Have you found a good way already, or is that something you really still have looking into?
So what we created now is a clinic. It's basically a clinic for different audiences, different teams, where we have outside experts on inclusion, diversity, marketing, helping us with our briefings, our campaigns, or any type of question a marketeer may have or any support they might need. So you need this open conversation and sometimes hold someone's hand because everyone has indeed a different perspective or a different background and have therefore a different lens how they look at things.
And that's something I found so inspiring during this global pandemic to see from Philips, from the brand you work for. Is the purpose got enlightened? What's maybe a weird thing to say because there's so much horrible things happening during this global pandemic. But I think it's from a brand perspective, you're really saving lives. It's not only helping people, you're saving lives.
I think due to the pandemic, it came even more to the surface what our purpose is as a company, and also that the Philips healthcare products that were maybe first less known in a more general public. We were more known for TVs and light bulbs. And now people realize that we have all these wonderful, important solutions, healthcare solutions.
Can you introduce yourself a little bit on where did you come from?
So in terms of my cultural background, my mom is from Suriname. She's Creole, and my father is Dutch white. And they met in Holland. And I really feel like I'm part of the Surinamese culture, part of the Dutch culture. I actually go to Suriname quite often as well. And we have a house there. Yeah, so it's really wonderful. And I'm born and raised in Amsterdam. But when I actually started studying, that was first in Leiden, but later in Montreal, that's where my inclusion, diversity, intrinsic motivation actually started. Because suddenly I went from like a Dutch, predominantly white, homogeneous environment, because I was born and raised in Amsterdam-Zuid and went to like the schools in Amsterdam-Zuid. But then in Montreal, where I studied, I suddenly saw professors from all different cultural backgrounds. And that was for me really impactful. And then there was this program to help underprivileged children, and that I could help them with just simple things. And some of them had households where they didn't have anyone to support them with school or have a role model. And in a very subtle way, I was able to do that. So that's actually where it started, that I thought, equality is so important in life.
What did you study? You studied quite some things.
I studied first psychology in Leiden, but I always had interest in advertising. And then in Montreal, because most of my family lives in North America, so we're very focused on North America. And then I was able to study in Montreal. And there I did really marketing and advertising. And I think compared to at that time, because I'm talking about early 90s, the communication studies in the Netherlands was very theoretically. And there you really had to do like an advertising case. So as a team, you had someone doing the creative and the strategy. So it really felt like you were working in a team in an advertising agency, but also the marketing that was taught. So for me, it gave me so much more different way of being educated there. So it was very useful for me.
Is there one thing that you really can pinpoint as like there was like such a big difference of things how we are doing it here in Europe?
Yeah, I don't want to stereotype, but I think still the feeling in North America of everything is possible. I never felt that I was restricted, whereas still in Holland at times, but that's also just the culture of the Dutch and the mentality, that sometimes, you feel restricted at times. That's how I perceive it.
But that's also something you've always been fighting for. How do you see that nowadays with everything that's just happened during the global pandemic?
Yeah.
I think the global pandemic has showcased how bad things are actually in the world. There's also a lot of good things still going on.
Yeah.
But I think one of the main things COVID did with us is showing the inequality that's in the world.
Yeah, no, absolutely true. I think people that got most quickly affected were the people that were more vulnerable. And those people are often people that are less privileged or underprivileged. And I think absolutely that was very much visible also when you saw content, news content from various countries.
Partnerships and sponsorships.
Yeah.
Can you dive into
that
a little bit for us? How did it start and how did you saw your D&I influences?
Yeah, I think most of the partnerships are more common partnerships. One of the partnerships that really inspired the topic of inclusion and diversity was Pride, actually. And the first year that we organized it, it really also created a platform to even create more awareness about inclusion and diversity and the importance of that within the context of Pride within our organization. So we gave this platform to our employees where they were able to really present who they are, and also for us to demonstrate as an organization internally that you're allowed to be yourself.
How do you inspire and motivate people to focus more on diversity within the organization?
Yeah, I think the way to do it in an organization is really to have these conversations with everyone and to make them understand that if you work more inclusive and have a better diverse representation in all the marketing output that you develop, and actually in that whole journey also indeed with the agencies that you work with, the whole process, if you present them what the advantages are, then people are more willing also to embrace it. And I think in the end, people are willing to embrace it, but sometimes they just need the tools to understand how, and also get a better understanding, which you can justify with data, that it's really of advantage for their business.
So to round it all up and to ask you one last question, what would you give for advice to enact positive change?
Yeah, what I always say, speak up, dare to speak up. Even if you feel uncomfortable, make little steps to speak up. Because only if you have your voice heard, you can make that change.
That's a really nice ending of this episode. Thank you very much, Nathalie. Really
Thank you for
appreciate you
having
being
me.
here. Thanks.